It is Wednesday. You all know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Life in the Movies podcast. I'm one of your co hosts. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This week, well, it looks like Disney has closed out 2023 with Wish, and you couldn't pay people to see this movie. But Jacob and I have both seen the movie, and we decided that we're going to review and discuss. And first, I have to introduce my co-host, Jacob Martin. Jacob, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good today. This I'm not gonna lie, recording the sinuses have really been messing with me lately, but it's even with that, I'm still excited to talk about Wish. I think this will be an interesting discussion considering the reception this movie has. I know last week, Ryan, you said you weren't too big a fan of the movie, and I have my own thoughts on the movie as well. And I'm excited to talk about the newest Disney film.
Yeah, I have a feeling because I didn't particularly liked it. I think it's fair to say, Jacob, you may have liked it more than I did, but I think this is going to be, first of all, it's going to be a fair discussion. This isn't going to be like us like throwing blows or anything. Like it's not going to be that. I feel like if we disagree, I feel like it'll be a healthy disagreement. And
Yeah,
and that's what I respect about Jacob is that because I think like I'm not a big fan of The Last Jedi. You love The Last Jedi, but I know that about you. But we also agree on more things than we disagree on. And if we do disagree on something, it's a healthy disagreement. So that's what I appreciate about having you as my co-host. So I feel like if we do disagree on Wish, and I feel like we're going to disagree on quite a few things, it's going to come from a good place. So that's what I appreciate.
yeah, and I think that's what I feel like a lot of the film discourse has been lacking lately. Like, you can't even look at 1 second on film Twitter, and there's like people arguing back and forth about everything, and just the discussion is always unhealthy. And whether it's like the newest Disney movie or like the newest Marvel movie or Star Wars or DC or whatever, it's like it's either negative toxicity or positive toxicity. They always try to chew people out one way or the other. And, I'm not like that.
Yeah, that goalpost is always on roller skates. Is like just when you think you've made it, it moves again. It's permanently exhausting, and that's why next year I'm kind of shifting away from reviewing newer things unless it's for like this show or if I want to deliberately go out of my way to discuss it. So I'm making that conscious choice for next year. But I feel like diving into talking about Wish, I feel like I said, Jay and I are going to disagree, but like I said, it's going to be the healthy kind of disagreement. Is like we respect where each other is coming from. I feel, but I think before we dive into Wish, Jacob, have you seen anything interesting that you wanted to talk about?
Aside from Wish, I actually did rewatch Wally, which I hadn't seen Wally in a few years. So it's good to revisit that film. Pixar movie from 2008. Wally fascinates me because I did not like Wally when it first came out. Uh, I don't think I could fully comprehend what I was watching at a young age at the time, and I thought the film was boring. Uh, whether it was when I saw it in theaters, or then other times when I think the movie. I think we were on a school field trip, and I tried watching it again, and I was bored by it as well. And so, for the longest time, I thought Wally was the worst Pixar movie. And then the older I got, I rewatched it, and I'm like, you know what? This movie is not boring. This movie is actually really amazing. And I think it's one of those where I think Pixar was trying to gear more for a mature audience while still making it accessible for younger kids. And I actually admire the boldness in that to show that animation is more than just for the kids, like Bob Chapek claimed. This movie has a lot going for it, and Yeah, it tends to be lumped as a sci-fi film, and there is a lot of sci-fi stuff in there with like its commentary and everything like that. But at the core of it, it's a comedy in the first 30 minutes of the movie. The fact that Pixar told a movie where there's hardly any dialogue in the first act and it relies more on its visual comedy, it's very like Charlie Chaplin like. That it's amazing that Pixar had the guts to do something like that. And then at the forefront, it's a romance with Wally and Eve. Yeah, there's a story centered around that, and there's commentary about like post-apocalyptic Earth, and then like the consumerism, and then the environment and stuff like that. But at the forefront, you have this romance between Wally and Eve, which drives the movie, and it's one of the most it's probably one of the sweetest love stories ever put on screen. And even the commentary that's like in the background of the movie, like normally I get annoyed when they do like commentaries like this in animated films. In fact, they tried doing that. Disney tried doing that recently with Strange World, and it fell flat on its face in that movie because it came out of nowhere and it was on the nose. Wally was not on the nose with its commentary. It gave you enough context in the story without it feeling like it was force feeding an agenda down your throat. And Wally did it in such a smart way that I respect it for it. And it's one of the few times where they tackle such a commentary and did it in an effective way where they used the story and the characters to tell the story instead of shoving the message. And for that, I give it utmost respect for that. This is a great movie, beautiful animation, top tier score from Thomas Newman. This is, yeah, I think on rewatch, Wally is now in my top 10 Pixar movies. There's a lot to love about this movie.
For many reasons, Wall-E is a movie that has just aged tremendously well. Some things for the right reasons, others for the not so right reasons. But honestly, we could do an entire Wall-E discussion. That's a future episode of the show one day. I feel like for Pixar, they didn't have to go that thinking, man. Like I was kind of similar to you, Jacob, in that I liked it. I liked the style of it, but I was way too young to appreciate when the movie came out in 2008 because I was 11. I was 11 when the movie came out, and it was like I liked it, but I didn't really get it. I feel like now, and I haven't seen the movie in a while, but I've seen clips, and I do really enjoy it. For like you said, first half almost no dialogue. It's just Wally doing his thing, like doing his job, and then when he goes home, he watches what was that movie? It was like the I forget now. It's like
Hello,
a
Dolly.
Hello Dolly, thank you.
Yeah.
And like watching that scene is like really nice of him. And then seeing Eve and that whole thing, it was just really nice. And then we get on to the axiom, and it's like, yeah, humanity's kind of fallen far. And so it's it's just an interesting movie, especially as you get older. It's one of those movies where I think maybe kids wouldn't get it, but it's like that quote from Back to the Future is like, guess you kids aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned Hello, Dolly because uh, the songs that are played in Wally, I associate more with Wally than I do Hello, Dolly. I don't have near as much of a connection with Hello, Dolly. I've only seen the film one time, and it was just an okay movie. But yeah, I love the use of those songs in Wally.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice, but it was a good choice.
All right, what have you watched, Ryan?
So just some Christmas movies for the Christmania series here on the channel. I'll just breeze through a couple of them. I've been working ahead a little just so I got the first time watches under the belt. Earlier today, I watched Santa Claus is Coming to Town. This is a Christmas special from Rankin Bass, and this is a movie that it,
Wait,
it's like
hold on.
Rankin.
Did you say first time watch?
Yes.
Oh wow, I've seen that since I was a kid.
Well, it was very good, and the story like is rather loose. It's like the tale. It's like how Santa Claus, like it's Santa Claus's origin story, but it's Rankin Bass, like it's Rankin Bass's version of it, and the animation legitimately is just still incredible to watch to this very day. The stop motion is like there's parts of it where you're like, okay, yeah, definitely was like questionable, but then there are other parts where just like, when was this made again? 1970. So this movie is over 50 years old and it still looks incredible. You got a pretty good cast in here as well. Fred Astaire is the main narrator. There's even a Fred Astaire puppet, which I did not expect, but I was like, who does that look like? And then sure enough, it's Fred Astaire. And I love me some Fred Astaire, so it was nice to see him. And then Chris Kringle was voiced by Mickey Rooney, who was a lot of fun as well. The best part of the movie by a lot was Burgermeister Meister Burger, who just, I was like, why are you the way that you are? It was like, he was so over the top, like silly, but like I liked it weirdly. So it's kind of weird to me how the special's not talked about like Rudolph or Frosty. I mean, I can kind of get it, but at the same time, is like when people think, oh, the Santa Claus is the definitive Santa movie, and like the Santa Claus is coming to town has been around for a lot longer. So I don't know. Maybe it's just weird, but I really did enjoy it. It was quite good.
Yeah, like I said, I've seen Santa Claus is coming to town since I was a kid. I grew up watching a lot of the Rankin Bass stop motion Christmas specials. And yeah, that's one of their best ones for sure. I'm glad that you appreciate it on a first time watch. Also, special shout out to Keenan Wynn as the Winter Warlock. He's a great character as well. I love the one song that he sings with Mickey Rooney. You know, put one foot
But
in
in front of
front
the
of
other, yeah,
the other.
that was a good song, and I also watched Carol for Another Christmas, which is a version of A Christmas Carol, but was written by Rod Serling. And if that name sounds familiar to anyone, that's the same guy who created The Twilight Zone. He also wrote the screenplay for the first Planet of the Apes movie. Rod Serling wrote a lot of very good things, let's just say that. The movie was basically it was released in 1964 and it was basically one big ad for the United Nations almost. And I'm not like talking out of turn. In my research, I found it was literally sponsored by Xerox as basically one big like, hey, the UN is really cool. Like very much in line with that. Serling wrote it. Joseph L. Mankiewicz directed it, which, if that name sounds familiar to anyone, he's the guy who directed, among other things, All About Eve. He had a long and lengthy career. He directed Cleopatra, long career in the director's chair and as a screenwriter. The movie stars Sterling Hayden, who had a long career. He was Sergeant McCluskey in The Godfather, and he was also Jack D. Ripper in Doctor Strangelove, which came out the same year as Carol for Another Christmas. There's a bit of a minor Doctor Strangelove reunion because the villain in the movie, basically playing the Ghost of Christmas Future, though his character's named Imperial Me, is Peter Sellers. And and like I said, Doctor Strangelove in this movie came out in 64. So same year, same timeline. You got Sterling Hayden and you got Peter Sellers, both basically in their prime almost. And you get them for this one-time TV special. It's just weird to see, but it's also really cool as well. And Peter Sellers, before this, had actually suffered a heart attack, which had pretty much sidelined him for a good long while. This was his first role back from that. And he was so passionate about the movie that he only accepted $350 for his participation in the movie. At the time, he was charging $750,000 for every role that he participated in. So he eschewed that and only took the SAG standard 350. So that's shows you how passionate he was in this. And then you got, as Ghost of Christmas Present, you got Pat Hingle, who had a long career, Steve Lawrence, who was Maurice Sline in the Blues Brothers, and he had a long career. You have Eva Marie Saint in here as well. Robert Shaw, actually, Robert Shaw is the Ghost of Christmas Future. Peter Sellers is a completely different character. But Robert Shaw, again, long career, From Russia with Love, Jaws. It's just one of those movies that you look at and you go, this is like a snapshot of like people who were awesome then and are awesome now, and some people who are going to be awesome later. The movie is, like I said, it's a version of A Christmas Carol. Serling went a little more political with it, and it depends on your mileage. It really didn't work for me because A Christmas Carol is very much a story about the goodness of humanity. And I don't know what it didn't work about it, but it just it's your mileage is going to vary. The entire special is on YouTube. The quality is a little but but it was an interesting watch to say the least.
Yeah, that one does sound like a. There's always odd versions of A Christmas Carol out there, and that one
Yeah.
definitely sounds like one of the stranger ones. That's for sure.
Yeah,
But
there's this American version of A Christmas Carol with Henry Winkler in it, and I've never seen it, but there's this channel that I watched called Hats Off Entertainment, and the host of that channel did a whole big thing on three weird Christmas Carol versions, and that was one of them. And there was this one comedian who did the ghosts of past, present, and future, but as like different celebrities. And so there was that. Let me find it really quick.
yeah,
An American Christmas Carol. Here it is. So yeah, Henry Winkler plays Scrooge. He's known as Benedict Slade in the movie. And then let me find it first. And then you got, they said, this comedian who basically plays all of the ghosts. And he doesn't, it wasn't really that particularly good. It was like he was doing like these celebrity impressions, but they were, I don't even really know how to properly describe it. He was doing W.C. Fields as one of the ghosts, and then one of the ghosts was like Truman Capote, and then he was also doing like an Edith Bunker like homage. It was just a whole it was a whole thing. But there are just a lot of weird Christmas carols out there.
yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the weirdest ones I've seen. They did. I've seen one, Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol, which I'm not familiar with Mr. Magoo, and so to me it was just kind of weird. They just took a random cartoon character that I'm not super familiar with and just placed him as Scrooge. With it just felt like a weird cash in to me. But I know that's a beloved one for many people. But I just, as someone who's not that familiar with Mr. Goo, I thought it was an odd flex.
Yeah, very odd. I'm sure Mr. Magoo had his fans, but it's like, hmm, yeah, interesting. But I pass it off to all of you. What have you all been watching lately? Let us know in the comments. But Jacob, let's get into some Wish talk. And as of this recording, the movie pretty much is like it's not bombed, but it is bombing. I'll pull up the box office numbers now, but last I checked, they're not looking good. And this is not like the dog pile, I'm just providing context. But according to Wikipedia, the budget is around 200 million, and as of this recording, it has only made 81.9 million. Consider considering considering how much, like in terms of marketing and other things that Disney has to pay for, it's looking like they got another like dud on their hands, which we've talked about. It's a bit of a shame, but it is what it is. I pass it off to you, Jacob. First off, what did you think of the movie?
Okay, well, Wish was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. Obviously, I love going to see Disney animated movies every year. Wish seemed like a real special film because it's coming out celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Disney Studios. I figured this would be the great comeback film that Disney was looking for after they've had such a pretty rough year at the box office this year. And then their last animated film from 2022, Strange World, was a critical commercial failure on all accounts. And I talked about how that movie was such a disappointment. Wish, the movie, I don't think it's a great movie. I think there are some flaws with the film, one of which has to do with its pacing. There's one moment story wise where I felt like we skimmed through a really pivotal scene, and it just felt weird that they skimmed it. However, the movie itself, I was highly invested in it. I liked the main character. I thought was likable. I thought the animation in this movie was absolutely beautiful. The blend of the CG and 2D animation. I thought it was one of the more unique looking animated Disney films, and I enjoyed the experimentation. I really respect that we have a full blown Disney villain. We haven't had a full blown Disney villain in years. I think the last one was probably Mother Gothel Entangled. And I was eating that up with Chris Pine as King Magnifico. I thought he was the highlight of the movie. I enjoyed his character progression, a character who started off with good intentions but let ego and power get in the way to where he becomes a very unstoppable, irredeemable villain. I thought it was, and then Chris Pine was hamming that up to the max. I thought that was great. I thought the film had some really good songs. I thought the film, I think, balanced telling its own story, having its own identity, while also having some very cool Easter eggs in the film. I liked some of the references that were in there. I don't think they were on the nose. They were like, if you're familiar with Disney, you'd pick them up. If not, they're you could still get into the film either way. Like I said, I don't think this is the next Tangle or Frozen. I feel like I think if they I think if there was like maybe one additional spin on the story, I think maybe it would be up there with Tangle or Frozen. This just felt like Disney's greatest hits, a movie celebrating the 100 years. And some people say it's too formulaic. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing because you know there's so many other good movies that have had these tropes, and this is just another movie that I think does it good, but I think other movies do it better. And I think that might have been what disappointed some people. But for me, I still thought it was a very worthwhile Disney film. It still checked all the boxes. It still had some really good moments in there, and I had a good time watching it.
I think the best, and I'll like kind of couple things that I liked. I think the best song was Asha's song, the
But
main song that you hear in all the trailers. That was the best song by a lot.
yeah, that one I'll agree was the best song in the film. It's carries on the tradition of the "I Want" songs that the main character is wishing for, kind of in the same vein as "Part of Your World" and "The Little Mermaid" and um, "Go to Distance" from Hercules, "Let It Go" from Frozen, just to name a few. And I thought this was another really good one as well. I liked most of the songs in Wish. I really like the villain song as well. I mean, Chris Pine, I don't think he has the best singing voice by any means, but because he was so over the top, I really think he dived into the hamminess very well. And I thought his song, which is called "This Is the Things I Get," was one of the highlights as well. I will say the one song that didn't work for me. There's this one song that's sung by after the star comes to life and starts making all the animals talk. All the forest animals sing a very cringy song called "You're a Star," and for some reason, the way like the writing of that song sound like something that could have come out of a Disney Channel movie, and I was like, yeah, I could have done without that one.
There are some good Disney Channel movies. I feel like I should say that, but at the same time, I do totally agree with you on that. That one, like, and I like the design of the star, like the star's design. Like, I liked that, but just I don't know. There was just like I said, I stand by it. I feel like my main problem with the movie is that it felt like some like you fed all of Disney's canon into like a robot and like make the next one. And it's like there you go. It was like checking off bullet points. I feel like there was just something missing. It was just like it was just it felt too basic for me, I guess. And I mean, I've heard all the people say this is the worst. This is far from the worst. That I've seen Disney movies that just straight up annoy me or just make me really mad. This just this is arguably like I just kind of nothinged it, which I mean, just I don't know if that makes it worse or better. I'm sure we can have that discussion at a later date. But I feel like and I feel like there were certain points in the movie, I think you touched on it earlier, where the one dude, I can't remember his name, but it was like he gave his wish and then he can't remember it, but then it is granted back to him. As soon as it brought up, I'm like, that's going to be a big talking point later on, and sure enough, it is. And I saw it coming a mile away, and I can't remember the character's name for the life of me, but it's like Asha's friends. I didn't care for her friends. There was one friend of hers, the little guy, that character annoyed me. Like, I did not care for that character at all. And it didn't help that their character designs were eerily, not their designs, but their color schemes, like the clothes they wore, they were eerily similar to the Seven Dwarfs. Even the little guy says at the end, "This is why I am grumpy." I'm like, at that point, even God's going, "Do you get it?" So I don't know if you picked up on that, but
Yeah,
like I was like, oh, these are the seven dwarves, and that's Snow White.
yeah. I did pick up on the Seven Dwarfs Easter egg. That didn't annoy me because that was one of the Easter eggs that I thought was actually I actually didn't mind that. Like I thought it was kind of cool that they were trying to resemble that, and the characters trying to have the have the personalities of the seven dwarves while actually being their own characters. I liked Asha's main friend who resembles Doc. I thought she was a good side character that I did enjoy.
If it was just her, then I'd be fine with it. But then you got the one dude who makes the betrayal, and then like the little guy who is just like who's always like trying to talk Asha out of doing anything. I just like there's too many friends of hers that are too forgettable. If it was just her and her doc friend, I feel like that would have been better.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to what you were saying about I guess it's kind of the twist of the movie where like there's a betrayal or whatever. That kind of ties into what I brought up earlier. There's like this one scene in the film where I feel like we're missing something. Like we have the villain song, and Asha goes and steals some of the wishes to bring back to her family, particularly her grandfather. And you have this moment where she's trying to explain all that's happening, but then you get to the scene, it's like, oh, that already happened, and she's giving the grandfather her wish. I'm like, do you know it would be much more impactful if we get to see the reactions of like her mother and her grandfather about like, oh, this like wishing stars are a thing and the king is bad. And it's just like, oh, they just accept it out of the blue. I'm like, okay, that's a weird edit. And then the villain comes in, barges in, it's like, oh, I found you. Someone snitched. I'm like, okay, well, who snitched? And then you find out who it is. I'm like, okay, they were saving that for a twist. I get that, but the other part where like she's trying to explain the star and everything to her family, and they just accept it out of the blue. I'm like, I wish we'd have seen the reaction, especially on the grandfather side. I thought that was a weird choice.
The grandfather's reaction, like I don't want to know my wish. I'm just sitting there like, what? Like that was confusing, and then he like reneges on it. Is like, yeah, maybe I want to know it after all. I'm just like, pick a lane, my guy. Pick a lane. And I would have been fine if you'd been like, he doesn't want to know, he doesn't want to save him. He wants to save himself from the pain. But then slowly over time, he's like, okay, maybe I do want to know, but it's cartoonish levels of just like, I don't want to know, I want to know. Like they just cover so much ground, and I don't think it helps that the movie is like 95 minutes. And I've talked about on this channel like run times and how like there's blockbusters that are 2.5 hours long that just straight up didn't need to be. It could be the opposite way as well. Like a movie could be 90, 95 minutes and be like, this felt like it needed to be at least an hour 45. I feel like there was like some stuff left on the cutting room floor. I felt like there were certain instances that just, I don't know, I just felt like there was something missing.
Yeah, that was the one instance where I felt like there was something missing. The rest of the film, I didn't mind the pacing, but it was just that one moment where I was like, yeah, this needed more fleshing out. And I think I'd buy into the grandfather's change of position a lot more because it does come out of nowhere, like you said. Because at first he's like, I don't want to know my wish. And then he like suddenly changes his mind and we don't get a real context of why.
Yeah, and what did you think about the goat? I can't remember the goat's name, but I
Uh
thought the goat was annoying. I was just sitting there
Valentino, yeah.
like it was anti-humor. It was like great job, goat's name. I think it's Valentino. Like good job, Valentino. It's like I found it with my butt. I'm like, this is Disney, folks. This is Disney in 2023.
Uh,
Like, and I'm human. I could laugh at things like that, but I'm not trying to be elitist. But just make it funny, and it just wasn't funny. At least it wasn't funny to me.
well, there's funnier comic relief characters for sure. Like I'll even defend Olaf till my dying breath. I think Olaf is a fantastic side character who's really funny, even in Frozen 2. Valentino, I didn't mind. I think what helps, he's voiced by Alan Tudyk, and I've enjoyed a lot of his voice work over the years. And so I didn't find him annoying per se. I don't think a lot of his jokes landed. The butt joke, I was like, okay, I could have done without that. But I don't think, but he didn't annoy me per se. I thought just his involvement, I think, was still fun to watch. I also I like the part where he was like hanging out with the chickens. I thought that was funny. So he still got a couple chuckles out of me, but I wouldn't say he's like the best comic relief character.
Yeah, no disrespect intended to Alan Tudyk. He is very talented. He was one of the best parts of Rogue One. Congratulations, you are being rescued. Like still my one of my favorite parts of that whole movie. So Alan Tudyk is very talented, and like many, I'm sure there's some people who don't know this, but in Moana, he voices the chicken there,
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
lot of his dialogue basically is just like, "Rah!" But he makes it work
yeah.
somehow.
He's done quite a bit of good voice work over the years. He was King Candy in Wreck It Ralph. He was the
He's
Duke of
good in that.
Weasertown in Frozen. He was the nerd worm character in Ralph Breaks the Internet, and he recently voiced the Mad Hatter in Once Upon a Studio.
So yeah, he is very talented. I just the material that he was given to work with, I could care less for, really. I was just sitting there like, really, that's the best you can come up with? It just like I said, I felt like he needed to be there because every Disney movie needs a talking animal. It's like Mulan or like something or other. But unlike in Mulan, where Mushu was actually funny, shout out to Eddie Murphy, this just felt like cringy at best.
Yeah, I can definitely get that, but I feel like at the same time you could do a lot worse. like Chicken Little, where like everyone was trying to be comic relief, and it fell flat.
You could always do worse with Chicken Little. You can always do worse.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Uh, yeah, I'm curious, Ryan. What did you think of some of the other Easter eggs in Wish? You brought up the Seven Dwarfs one. There's some other Easter eggs in the film there was some there was like about two or three Peter Pan references in the film. I don't know if you picked it up.
There was at least one pretty blatant one. There was like Chris Pine's like, boy, you wouldn't grow old. I'll take that. I know there was that one.
Yeah,
I'm sure there was a more overt one I must have
there
missed.
there was one at the end where there was this girl who was desiring to fly, and her wish gets granted at the end, and she's hanging out with this guy who's dressed up like Peter Pan.
Oh yes, I did catch that.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember the exact context, but I do remember that at the bitter end. I was like, yeah, I totally understood that reference. I'm
yeah.
just like, yeah, like
And there's some references that are I think that are there for like the Disney nerds. Like there's this one like in the forest scene, there is a talking bear named John, which is a reference to Little John and Robin Hood. And his voice actually sounds like the voice of Little John, the character who is also the voice of Baloo in the Bare Necessities. And I think there was a deer that was referenced that I think they that was named Bambi in the film.
I honestly did not remember that.
They do the classic storybook opening, and it looks like the storybook that was in Sleeping
Oh
Beauty.
yeah, I remember that now. To be honest, in the theater, I was like, wait a minute, Shrek literally parodied this.
Yeah,
So it's like
and
we've gone full circle now.
and that book but Sleeping Beauty did that book style first, so it go from Disney, DreamWorks, and back to Disney. So like we're reclaiming the storybook. And then even the font before you see Wish the book, where it says like a Walt Disney feature presentation, and you have that yellowish background, that is how Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs opened.
Yeah, so it's I don't know. Some of the references are like, okay, I noticed that because I've seen a lot of Disney movies, but then there are others that are just like, you're just doing it for the sake of, hey, I remember that, or in some cases, people just wouldn't understand that at all. So it just made me question, like, why even do it in the first place? I mean, I get it, Disney's 100 years old, I understand that, but it just, I don't know. This movie just left me with more questions than answers.
Okay, yeah, I understand that. Yeah, I think in our last one you talked about there was a moment at the end that really annoyed you.
Oh yeah, when I feel like I feel that moment where at the very end, like Magnifico is like defeated and he literally becomes like the mirror on the wall. I was just sitting there like, huh, do you get that? So I don't know. I didn't like that. I didn't really like that.
Uh, well, I don't think he's specifically the mirror on the wall. I think that was just like a wink wink Easter egg type thing. But I will say the moment of the movie where I realized, okay, I'm really digging this movie is actually when Magnifico become like starts to overpower Asha and all the townspeople, and they sing the Wish song again, and they use their own whatever wishes they have left to defeat the villain, and I think that actually was a very powerful moment. I thought I actually really it was kind of cool that the climax of the movie relied around the musical number, which I can't think of another Disney movie that actually did that. So I'm like, okay, you actually did something cool.
And there was one other where it was like I feel like the queen, like Magnifico's like wife, like the queen. I feel like they were gonna do something again. If there's another problem where it's like elaborating on when I was talking about how the movie feels like way short and it could have been longer. Like her whole thing, like recommending Asha getting rejected, and just I don't know. It feels like it wasn't built up enough, kind of like turning on her husband. I don't know. I just feel like that could have been developed more, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I can see that. I wasn't sure what they were gonna do with her character throughout the course of the movie, like whether she would be on his side or she would kind of reject him because she realized he's gone down a path she can't get behind anymore. I actually like the direction they took her character. But I wouldn't say she was like a standout character by any means, but I do think it fit the story.
I'm struggling to kind of like come up with things to talk about. I think that's just my personal problem with it. It just, like I said, it feels like it's checking off bullet points, and it just ultimately it's just a Disney movie that's just kind of there. It feels like I feel like people are making it out to be the worst, and we've discussed that. Disney's had way worse than this. I feel like just they're in there just this very forgettable era is like is like just very like it feels like just like borderline content almost. Is like we got to make this just to like fill a quota. It's like no heart, no soul, no like reason to do it except for like here you go. So I don't know. I if I sound dejected, I promise you I'm trying not to be, but I'm just struggling. I'm struggling quite a bit.
So you'd have it in like the more forgettable tier.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of effort put in, but at the same time, it's like movies are very hard to make. So I have a baseline of okay, they clearly worked very hard on this, but at the same time, that effort could like just lead to something pretty bad. So it's just I don't know. There's like 1,000 other movies I'd watch before I'd ever watch Wish again. But
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's like horrible or the worst ever. I'm glad, Jacob, that you liked it. There are some people who are defending it, and they have more than every right to. For me, it just felt like it was just kind of there.
Yeah, I don't understand why people think this is one of the worst Disney films. I've seen like different, some of those clickbait style videos like Wish is the worst. It's the death of Disney. I'm like, really? Wish is your movie that you think's killing Disney? Like, I don't get it. I honestly don't think it's like I would rather watch Wish way more than their last animated film, Strange World. I didn't care for Strange World. Wish, on the other hand, did I think what it set out to do. Yeah, there's a lot of familiar beats, but it tackled the story. I still think it tackled the story well. I still got what I wanted out of a Disney movie like this. I think certain plot beats could have improved to make the story better, to make it like in that top echelon of Disney films. But I still think it's a good movie. And I feel like people are crapping on this movie way more than what it deserves. I think this movie I think it's getting way too much hate, and I don't really get it. But I like it's very. I don't think it does anything like super offensive or anything that some of these people are complaining about. It's just a celebration of the tropes that make Disney such a good studio. And this movie does feel like a love letter, even though I think Once Upon a Studio did that in a more meaningful and more emotional way. This movie still provided a lot that I still appreciated. So I still liked it for what it was.
Well, fair enough. But I pass it off to all of you. What did you all think of Wish if you have seen it? Because it's not a question of I asked this knowing no knowing you all watching it have seen it. I asked this like legitimately, did you see this? Because this movie has been struggling quite a bit, but I'm sure you all watching this know that. But let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say as always. And thank you all so much for watching. Jacob, it's a privilege to do this with you every single week. We're closing in on 100 episodes, which is crazy to think about, but just grateful to have done this almost 100 times with you. Tell the people where they can find you.
They can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Letterbox, and also you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. As far as content coming on my channel this week, this of course is dropping on a Wednesday. Uh, so today, as of this video, I'll be doing a watch party with Jacob Collins at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 3D Movie Cinema. We'll be doing a watch party of the 2006 version of Black Christmas, which I've never seen before. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. I've not seen that version. I've only seen the original. I have mixed thoughts on the original, so we'll see how this remake does. But one thing for sure, I know it's still going to be better than that recent remake from 2019, which I hear is really, really bad. So if you want to watch the watch party with us, feel free to do so.
As always, Jacob's channel is linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe there. As for this channel, Christmania is in full swing, so daily uploads throughout the month up until December 25th. This channel is almost at 400 subscribers, so I'm knocking on my wood desk, like knocking on wood, that I get to 400 subscribers by the end of the year. I would very much like that. So if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe. I got a ton of content coming out for the rest of the year. And then for 2024 is when the rubber meets the road. I got big plans for next year. So stay tuned for all of that. But for Jacob Martin, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you all in the next one. Y'all take care.